I went to Cuba in 1969, and I wanted to see for myself who these people were. And I came back, and I was really shocked to find that my country had not told me the truth about who they were. They were actually very generous, very warm, very loving people that wanted nothing more than to be friends with our country. And it really made me, it really broke my heart um, to see this. And I thought that eventually somehow it would get sorted out. And I don't know how long a time you have for me to.
Do whatever you want.
Well, when I got back from Cuba, I went to see my mother, and she had an article from the Detroit Free Press, which was the major newspaper in Michigan at the time, and probably still is. And she was in tears, and she said, "How could you, um, how could you be a traitor? How could you have done this to us?" Because an article had been written on the front page of the Detroit Free Press that said that I had been seen firing sophisticated Russian weapons in the central highlands of Cuba in preparation for some kind of urban warfare. And not only was it not true that I hadn't ever touched a gun, neither had anyone else that I had been with, because we all traveled as a group, 500 of us, for months, and I knew where everybody was at all times. So it was just made up. And I don't know if you can imagine how shocking it would be to see that the front page of the Detroit Free Press would make up a story that the editor would go to a journalist and say, "Don't even try to find out any facts. Just make up a story and vilify this Michigan boy, and make people afraid of him." And my mother was in tears. She was a loan officer at the bank. She'd been vilified in our city. Um, People had turned their back on her. They had shunned her for raising a traitor. And I felt that it was really, really unfair. But I was a big chicken. And so I didn't do anything. I didn't step up. And after 30 years went by and nothing happened, I had somehow, my life had changed in a way that I now had the finances so that I could say what I wanted to say. And I decided that I was going to make a film and sell who the Cubans were that I had met. And when I met them, when I went back, I made this film called From Cuba with Love to show the Americans that the Cubans would love nothing more than to be friends with them. And this recent um, taking flags down and putting flags up has been little more than a shell game, because we still have a law that says that any country that trades with Cuba can be sued in an American court. And if you have a law that says that any country that trades with Cuba can be sued in an American court of law, that's just bullying. That's bullying on the international scale, and it's mean, and it's not the American way. And I'm ashamed of our policy, and we need to get out of Guantanamo. We need to apologize for killing 3 million people in Vietnam. We need to apologize for all the terrorism that we allowed a man to go free today that shot down a Cuban plane and killed 79 people back in the 70s. We have behaved really, really poorly and I'm really brokenhearted, and I just pray that my country wakes up and does the right thing. It's so simple to just say, we're sorry, we were afraid of communism, we thought that it was going to destroy us, but now look, the Vietnamese are communists, it didn't do anything to us. If people want to have a communist country, then they should have one. And if they ruin their country with communism, then let them. Everybody should have the right to have their own country. We're not so good that we should be able to tell other countries how they should run their country. We should let other countries be, and then we can finally find out how is our world going to be run with respect for other people's countries, with allowing people to have their own system, whatever system they choose. And I thank you so much for providing me with this moment to describe my brokenheartedness and to allow me to say that I have so much faith in the American principles, and I so much believe that when we had a system that allowed for other countries to respectfully live their system the way they wanted to, that we were one of the greatest countries on earth, and now we've lost so much of our prestige with the way that we behaved. And I want us so much to get back to those principles, and I don't think it's that hard. And I pray that we do it, and I pray that we do it soon. Thank you so much.
So much fear and misunderstanding between our two countries. After 40 years of isolation, we really don't know what lives in the hearts of the Cuban people at all. Yet, as we enter a new century, it seems obvious that the most important thing we need to do as a species is learn to get along. Our country is founded on the principle of tolerance for views that are even opposite our own. But how do we find healing for wounds that were inflicted before our time? Perhaps the most courageous act we can offer is to listen to one another. And somebody has to be big enough to drop the labels and go first. This is the story of an adventure to do just that, to see what the Cubans really care about, what they struggle with, what they wish they could say to Americans if they had the chance to do so. This is their story, those who took a chance and agreed to an intimate interview with an American film crew, from the heart of the Cuban people to the American people, from Cuba with love.
Te quiero, que mi guitarra lo sabe, te llevo dentro del pecho.
Regardless of what gets thrown in their path, the Cubans retain their sense of humor. This is Ana and Enrique, who've been married for 13 years.
13 años.
13.
Luchando con él.
Luchando, 13 años de luchando.
Gran lucha. No, yo no puedo romper nada de eso, porque no tengo.
todos
No
los
tengo
platos.
dinero
mira.
para comprarlo.
Nosotros tenemos un matrimonio
Ah,
perfecto,
sí.
porque allá en nuestra casa todo se hace a la mitad.
Ah,
Él ensucia, yo
la
limpio.
mitad.
Ella cocina y yo como. Yo ensucio y ella lava.
We told him about someone we'd met in Cuba who only makes 800 pesos a month, on which he barely survives.
Uno puede vivir.
Tiene un buen salario.
Buen salario,
800 pesos son
$40.
40 dólares. 4 botellas de aceite. Ya son 2. Y nada más que tiene aceite.
Sí.
Para cagar liviano.
Es un problema, un
Sí.
dilema. Es estresante decir qué voy a cocinar, qué le hago de comer a mi familia hoy.
Sí.
No sé qué le voy a hacer,
Ah,
me vuelvo loca, qué invento.
sí,
¿Eh? Y entonces eso te da mal genio.
sí.
Y entonces te fajas, discutes, te peleas. No hay ajo, no hay cebolla, no hay aceite, pero te gastaste el doble del aceite. Pero si lo que me trajiste un aceite hace 15 días, ¿cuánto tú querías que durara? ¿No?
Sí.
Entonces mira.
Tapping the elbow is Cuban Sign Language for describing someone who's cheap. It means it hurts him when he bends his elbow to put his hand in his pocket.
Si algún día tu mujer por mucho portarse blanque, ay, te quiere poner el pie, no te dejes
Bueno, yo le quería decir, yo le diría a los niños de Estados Unidos que yo quisiera conocerlos a cada uno de ellos y ser su amiga.
Queremos mucho a nuestra familia, a nuestros niños, que nos gusta el trabajo, que somos personas que incluso admiramos al pueblo norteamericano en las virtudes que tiene, que sabemos que es un pueblo que ha luchado, que ha conquistado, que los logros que tiene materiales los ha logrado en gran medida por la lucha.
Piensen que todos aquí piensan toda la vez, necesito escapar, necesito...
No, pero de igual modo, lo importante es que los americanos vengan aquí y nos visiten. En las visitas se pueden comprobar, constatar las cosas. Yo creo que aquí no hay nada oculto. Pueden venir y pueden ver y comprobar.
People need to know each other. If we don't know each other, how can we understand? How can we respect each other?
Te cuento que cuando estuve en Estados Unidos me sentí como si estuviera en mi casa.
Son muy pocos los cubanos con los que tú puedas hablar que no sienta un cariño especial por el pueblo norteamericano, que no sienta, también fueron muchos años de vínculo, ¿no? Que no sienta un amor especial por los deportistas norteamericanos, por los músicos norteamericanos, por la literatura norteamericana, por la cultura norteamericana y por la posibilidad de ese encuentro.
Yo tengo una guajirita.
Many of the families we visited kind of reminded us of an earlier time when things just moved a little slower. This is Alberto and Rafael, brothers, who spend their days sculpting wood and entertaining each other.
Lo que quitas después no lo debes poner. Entonces tienes que pensar bien lo que vas a hacer. Bueno, como en la vida, ¿no? Lo mismo.
Lately, their sculptures have begun receiving international attention, but they have no plans to change the way they work.
A nosotros siempre hay mucha gente que nos recomienda mudarnos para el centro de La Habana. Pero nosotros decimos que no. No, ¿por qué no ir para allá? Aquí nací, crecimos. No, otra cosa que nos hace detener el trabajo es, por ejemplo, ahora cuando está el tiempo de mango y eso, de la fruta, la chirimoya, los mangos y eso. Cada vez que cae algo, se detiene el trabajo. En realidad llevamos rato aquí y no tenemos nada aquí que brindarle. Si nosotros tenemos una mata de coco ahí, pero en vaso y eso, a los campos.
It seemed to us that these guys were a little short on tools, but when a friend gave them a full set of over 100 carving tools, it created problems.
Y pusimos sobre toda la mesa justo aquella pieza. Por la noche. Estuvimos cerca de una semana tratando de trabajar con aquello. Fue totalmente imposible. Pero hemos adquirido buena destreza con este grupo de herramientas.
All of the wood they use comes from storms, fallen trees, and roots, which they see as an advantage.
A veces saca cosas más ricas que si tuviera el bloque simplemente y fuera a proyectarse sobre él.
They told us you can't demand anything from wood like this, that you just have to listen, and it will suggest what it wants to become.
Ahí hemos tenido la oportunidad de estar en contacto directo con la naturaleza y, no sé, amar la naturaleza. Eso es muy rico. Solamente lo que sí ponemos música rítmica, que eso alimenta el espíritu. Ya lo otro va fluyendo con la medida que uno entra en el calor del trabajo y eso. Se olvida de porque el mundo existe.
They invited us to visit their nearby home, which gave us a glimpse of why we didn't see any homeless people in Cuba. They lived there with 4 generations of their family.
Encantado, encantado.
The elders of this family have been together since the 30s, but he's still quite busy entertaining her.
Ella es mayor que yo.
Pregúntele cuántos años.
Ella es mayor que yo.
Yeah, she's older, all right. A full 2 weeks.
Cuando tenía 26 años, me casé con mi único novio. Ese señor que está ahí. Porque sí, enamorado tenía mucho.
These two have been around for a while. They reminded us how much the world has changed in just their lifetime.
Mi abuelo. Sí. Mi abuela. Africano. Mi mamá nació dentro de la esclavitud.
Este niño lindo se quiere dormir, quiere que lo duerma su mamá.
This is Pepe and Vilda. He's a mechanical engineer and she's a scientist. They're retired now, but busier than ever. They asked the government for a piece of land where they could make a garden. No money changed hands. They wanted it to be a community garden, so when they were given the land, they began to look around the neighborhood for help.
Cuando empezamos a trabajar en el huerto, había niños que estaban jugando en la calle. Jugando normalmente en la calle. Y Pepe les dijo la primera vez, ¿qué hacen ustedes ahí jugando en la calle? Vengan acá para que nos ayuden y van a hacer algo útil.
And in they came. Doing his best Tom Sawyer imitation, Pepe convinced the children that making a garden would be fun. Parents came by to see what the kids were so excited about, and they were dragged in.
Todo lo que los vecinos cortan, los chapean y ahí vamos haciendo el tuntún. O sea, no traemos nada de afuera. Los envases que utilizamos son reciclables y las herramientas son creadas en la misma comunidad.
They told us that nearly half of Havana's produce is grown in urban gardens just like this one. And these kids? We wanted to talk to them and see what their life is like.
Real de todo eso, que no había nada, y ya todo ese pequeño grupo de alumnos están obteniendo ya algo, un fruto, que es importante.
This was the first kid we met in Cuba. She was hanging around the outside of the garden center. We asked her if she'd learned anything about the plants.
Bueno, que las vacas se puede usar en muchos procedimientos. Uno de ellos es el secado solar que nos permite usarla como condimento y como otra cosa, como planta normal, medicinal.
All right. We could see she had a working knowledge of basil. She told us she attends a special music school. So we said, okay, sing us a song.
Traigo abre caminos pa' su destino y para la gente flaca está la albahaca y el apazote para los brotes y el vetiver para el que no ve y con esa hierba se casa usted y con esa hierba se casa usted. Vetiver.
Hey, does this kid need an agent? Maybe we should drop by one of these music schools and look around a bit. We went to a music school. As we entered, we found kids practicing all over the place. The school itself was once a country club. It was built by American for the wealthy. Now it's available to everyone, and everything is provided for free, including room and board for the kids that come from other parts of the country. The only requirement is talent.
El alumno se presenta, se le hace una prueba de aptitud y el alumno que apruebe, pues entra a esas escuelas.
It's very important to them that it's free, and there's no way to understand that without looking at the main idea behind the Cuban Revolution. It's about equality. Before the revolution, there was a powerful, wealthy class that ran the country, but the majority of Cubans lived in a virtual slavery, often going even without shoes, with no chance for advancement. So their entire social experiment revolves around the singular principle of equality, that no matter what, every child in Cuba will have an equal opportunity in life.
Agua pasada, no mueve molino.
While we were at the school, we bumped into other Americans. This is Ben. He and his crew had just showed up with a couple of shipping containers full of used pianos. In the U.S., these pianos were worth nothing.
But it's not worth anything in the States.
What would it cost to fix this up in the States? $500?
About the price, the value of the piano when you were done if you were lucky. No, it costs a lot more than that.
It would be more like $1,000 to make this.
Something like that, yeah. And to make it into a $1,000 piano.
But the soundboards in 100-year-old pianos are made of a quality of wood which no longer exists. The craftsmanship can no longer be matched. Ben and his crew teach the Cubans to restore them, and these pianos become jewels once again.
That's good. Okay. Gracias.
They have a saying in Cuba, lo mejor es lo que tiene. The best one is the one you have.
Hay un suave murmullo en el silencio de una noche azul. Son dos enamorados que encantados gozan.
Hemos dedicado durante muchos años a hacer arte con estos pocos que tenemos.
This is Miriam, one of the school's directors for the past 17 years. When I innocently asked if she enjoys her work, she choked up. I can't even understand what she's saying, but I don't need to. It's in her eyes.
The school system, the hospital system, it's all run the same way. With what little they have, they spread it out as best they can, and they produce some amazing results.
We came upon a busy downtown boulevard where mostly old American cars park in the middle of the street, load up as many people as can fit, and then go off to all parts of the city. No matter where you're going or how many people cram in the car, the price is exactly the same, about 2.5 cents. There are no destination signs on any of these cars. If you want a ride, you have to ask everyone where their car is going. In the midst of this chaos, I noticed 2 blind guys that had just zigzagged their way through several lanes of traffic.
This is a first for me, seeing the blind actually leading the blind.
First, I was concerned for their safety, and I offered my arm. But they think I need help.
¿Dónde va usted?
¿Dónde va?
Usted.
No, no voy. Solo estoy aquí
I
para...
had to explain to them that I was just there to see the cars, that I was amazed that these old American cars had survived in Cuba.
Ajá, sí, porque los cubanos lo cuidan mucho. Sí.
I decided to follow them and see how they do. People just grabbed onto them and passed them from one person to another until they finally found a car going their way. As is true of most Cubans, part of their family had long ago decided to move to the U.S.
Sí, tengo la mitad de la familia en Miami.
Ah, otra familia está...
Otra familia mía. Y este también tiene allá en Miami, gente. Tiene 2 nietas allá.
He visited his family in the U.S. 7 years ago.
A mí me ofrecieron mis hermanos, nadie quería que viniera, nadie quería... No, yo estoy bien aquí. Estoy bien aquí. No nos falta lo más necesario. Lo más necesario. Lo que tú necesitas.
Una niña enamorada al novio con ilusión le dice muy apurada, bésame en este rincón. Y el novio le dice, espera, caramba, deja que pase la gente que mira la callejera.
We visited the house in which perhaps the 20th century's greatest writer spent the last 20 years of his life. It's now a state-run museum, but everything is kept exactly as Ernest Hemingway left it. He typed while standing up at this typewriter. Every one of his books sits right where he left them.
Y de los más de 9,000 libros que hay en la casa.
This is Ampara, head of the restoration team. As with most Cubans, it took only a couple of minutes of chatting to be invited into her heart.
Me gusta bailar, soy divertida, siempre me gustó bailar, pero me casé con un patón, no bailo. Ya estamos acostumbrados, muchos años, 26 años de matrimonio. Ya a la vez que por el oído entra la música, los pies se mueven. Lo que tenemos en la sangre de África, mijo. Cuando suenan los tambores, allá va.
It's a bit surprising to hear light-skinned Cubans acknowledge their African roots. But it brings us to a profound difference between our revolution and theirs. The majority of American immigrants came to the U.S. to achieve their dreams of unlimited opportunities. In Cuba, the majority of immigrants came in shackles. The work of the plantations needed so much human labor that by the middle of the 19th century, the majority of people in Cuba were slaves. Their revolution is also about achieving their dreams, but they dream about sharing. We noticed that some of the employees' children, on a vacation from school, had come to work with their parents. We met one of them, named Ariadna. When we asked if there was anything she'd like to share with the Americans, she sped off and quickly returned with her art.
Me gusta pintar el campo porque es una base donde yo me emociono en pintar flores, plantas y esas cosas.
We asked her where the place she'd painted could be found.
Bueno, en realidad es imaginario porque lo hice de mi mente.
We noticed that the house she painted had 3 sides visible, a physical impossibility. We asked her about that.
Porque más bien de frente no me gusta hacerla, porque queda como si fuera una casita que nada más que fuera un portalito así. Por eso no me gusta más hacerla de esta manera.
The Cubans I met didn't seem to be particularly fascinated with numbers. Here's an example.
¿Cuántos años tiene usted?
¿Yo? Tres o cuatro.
On further grilling, we found he was actually 4, but he doesn't really care, one way or the other. A few minutes later, Ariadna appeared with another painting. We asked for its title. Her mother's reaction makes me ask, isn't it obvious this child is as loved and nurtured as any on earth?
De esta, un atardecer en el mar.
We stopped to ask directions and ended up meeting 3 high school teachers, Isabel, Ketty, and Udalis. They told us that in a socialist household, the chores are supposed to be divided equally between men and women.
Ah, no.
Su esposo es profesor también y los dos tienen las tareas
Mi
compartidas.
esposo es profesor y nosotros compartimos el código de la familia con fidelidad. El que llegue primero es que
Enciende el
asume
fogón imposible.
los menesteres del hogar.
Y ninguno se atrasa conscientemente para que el otro sea el que...
Yo soy la que algunas veces me demoro un poco más para
Te
que él
guías,
asuma.
te guías.
Un poquitico más.
We asked them how they felt about their life in Cuba.
Nosotros estamos satisfechos de la vida que tenemos, realmente. Yo digo que si yo volviera a nacer, volvería a hacer todo lo que he hecho en mi vida, volvería a casarme con el mismo hombre, volvería a estudiar la misma profesión y volvería a trabajar en donde trabajo.
A los ojos porque no quiero que tu mirar penetrante me deje ciego, que tu mirar penetrante me deje ciego.
This is Carilda, one of Cuba's foremost poets, banned in the 40s for writing too passionately.
Es verdad. Y eso fue en el año 46, cuando todavía se usaba que los novios se sentaran a los vis a vis y la suegra enfrente, no se podía ni dar un besito.
The world has changed, but in that time, when dating rules were so strict, Carilda was busy writing, "When I fall in love, I can't remember the rules," which begins like this.
Cuando voy en tu boca demorada y casi sin por qué, casi por nada, te toco con la punta de mi seno.
She revealed to us that her wisdom on the subject of love was not without its price.
El segundo esposo, Félix Pons Cuesta, fuimos felices y murió a los 38 años. Vino entonces una soledad que ni la poesía pudo poblar. O sea que hace 76 años que vivo aquí. Llegó el año 91 y entró en mi casa un joven que me perseguía y me perseguía por todas las calles de Matanza y que podía ser mi nieto. ¿Y qué pasó? Que aquel joven poeta entró y trajo una alegría, trajo la vida misma. Y me dije, esto va a terminar muy mal. Pero es que todo termina mal, porque ¿en qué termina la vida? ¿En la muerte? Pues adelante, vamos a ser valientes. Yo también rompí lanzas y creo que hice muy bien. Y lo que lamento es no seguirlas rompiendo.
We were also very curious about what the Cubans have struggled with. Just 5 years ago, they told us, the blockade caused a life-threatening shortage of one of the most basic human needs.
93, 94 were pretty awful in terms of food.
Los años 90 fueron años muy duros en este país, muy duros. Y de mucha incertidumbre. No sabíamos, nos acostábamos sin saber lo que íbamos a encontrar al día siguiente. No lo sabíamos.
Ya una mujer muy mayor, a veces teníamos 4 o 5 días que tomarnos unas sopas, unos caldosas o caldos, como nosotros le llamamos, hechos con col nada más.
Also, it was compounded by the neuritis, the epidemic of optical neuritis that hit the population, and there were hundreds of thousands of people who were affected by these epidemics. And nobody knows exactly what it is, but apparently it is connected with a drastic, dramatic change in the diet.
Llegó un momento en que realmente no había casi nada que comer. ¿Qué ocurrió? La gente comenzó a buscar soluciones porque lo único que el ser humano tiene es que no se deja morir sin luchar.
She told us that when the food ran out, people came out into the street to discuss how they would survive. And something unexpected happened.
Fue como un estallido de la gente. Y gente que nunca tuvo nada, nada. Pero que aunque sea tenía un plato de arroz y un huevo. Eso si el vecino no lo tenía, lo compartían. Y eso fue una cosa muy bonita que unió también mucho a la población.
But during the worst years of the crisis, they survived by eating some pretty weird things.
Digamos, estaba el picadillo de cáscara de plátano.
Margarita is a Cuban writer who offered to cook us some green banana peels for lunch. One of life's little ironies is that the peels and rinds of things turned out to be storehouses of vitamins and minerals.
Hervían los plátanos, la molía, la sazonaba con lo que tenía y comían eso, con el arroz.
I would crunch the eggshell and mixed it with hot water and make some kind of soup, which was very difficult to swallow, but because it was like swallowing crunchy eggshells. But I would insist on my family doing it. Please do it. It's good for your health. And they said, we can't assimilate that. It's impossible. People would be eating eggshells all over the world.
One of the favorites was the grapefruit steak, made from the white rind just below the peel.
Con eso, la gente, para engallar el estómago y comer algo saladito, le echaba un poquito de ajo y sal y como que lo freía, a veces en agua, porque no había ni aceite con qué freír. Deja que sirven ahí a Gloria y se comían el famoso bistec de toronja.
Somebody told me about something which was called the microjet rice. A microjet rice consisted in a method by which you could add double water to the rice and it would grow more.
Entonces, bueno, ya con menos cantidad de arroz, la gente comía más o menos lo mismo que antes.
I would put this on the table and be so proud that I was providing for my family until my son came one day and said, Mom, have you realized that what you're feeding us is just water and air?
There's a Cuban saying that describes their attitude about these difficulties. No hay mal que por bien no venga. Even bad things come for a good reason.
Eran cosas que nos fortalecieron. Aprendimos que el bloqueo nos hizo más fuertes, nos hizo hasta más saludables, porque empezamos a darnos cuenta de que había que sobrevivir. Esa era la palabra.
It was difficult. It was really difficult. We managed to survive, though, which is the happy end to the story.
At least in Havana, the situation has improved dramatically, although there's still a serious problem with food in the countryside. More than 1/3 of Havana's produce is grown in its urban gardens.
Tengo miedo del encuentro con el pasado que vuelve a enfrentarse con mi vida.
It hasn't just been the food shortages that have made inventors out of the Cubans. When the blockade forced all nations to stop buying Cuban products, even things they'd taken completely for granted disappeared. This young man fixes lighters, and since their stoves don't have pilots, everyone must have a lighter in good working condition.
¿Cuánto cobra por la reparación?
Eso es un acuerdo entre clientes. Precio fijo no tiene.
Sounds like unbridled capitalism to me. The law of supply and demand, charge whatever the market will bear.
¿Cuánto le puede costar la reparación?
Él es amigo mío.
Es amigo tuyo.
Somos amigos.
Oh well, so much for capitalism in Cuba. They've had to find something other than money to inspire them, and they've had 40 years to work on it.
We do not know of a world in which the United States was not blockading Cuba. There is at least one, maybe two generations of Cuba to which the blockade is a fact of life. It's something they have lived with. It's the conditions of normal life.
The difficulties it has brought them has in one way even enriched their lives.
Nosotras las mujeres que veíamos entonces en películas capitalistas, porque las películas socialistas, la verdad, todas las películas que nos venían de la Unión Soviética eran muy dramáticas, era la gente tomando sopa nada más y nosotros amábamos la frivolidad, éramos un poco hijas de aquella otra civilización que teníamos.
She told us she saw a dress in a U.S. movie that she wanted. A friend told her it could be made from a mosquito net. But our blockade was already in effect. Desire alone could no longer produce a dress.
Mira, se coge un mosquitero, entonces el problema era buscar los mosquiteros, porque también estaban desaparecidos. Pero las mujeres, cuando queremos, y sobre todo si estamos enamoradas, y nos queremos poner una saya plisada, encontramos el mosquitero. Y yo lo encontré por Bolondrón, que es un pueblo al sur de la provincia. Entonces se plisaba con alfileres, de esos alfileres de cabecita. Era otro drama encontrar los alfileres, porque había bloqueo. Y ahí se cortaba la saya y se hacía la saya. Y si no llegaste por el bloqueo, nunca pudimos saber lo que representaba esa cosa creativa.
We noticed a group of kids playing, and we stopped to chat with them. I started out asking them some pretty stupid questions, just to spend time with them.
¿Tienes hijos?
¿Yo?
¿Tienes? Sí.
Hijos.
¿Estás casada? ¿Por qué no?
Porque nosotros de chiquitica. Nosotros los niños nunca nos cansamos.
Then we lined them up, like birds on a fence. And I finally hit upon a valid question. I asked them if they would tell the American kids what they do for fun.
Jugar a la pelota. Jugar con la pelota. Jugar a las muñecas. Jugar a las muñecas. La arena. A cosas. Con la arena. Hacer jueguitos en la arena. A los escondidos, en la playa es mejor jugar a los escondidos porque te puedes esconder por abajo del agua. Esconderte por atrás de la arena. Esconderte abajo de la arena. Enterrarte. Cantidad de cosas.
Uh-huh. When I asked about her family, she told me that her grandfather is in the U.S. and seems to come and go whenever he wants.
Él vino en una semana y al venir cogió y se quiso quedar y se quedó aquí y va y viene.
Vaya y viene. ¿Cuándo quiere?
Cuando quiere, si quiere ir a buscar dinero, va. Si quiere venir, va, viene. Y así. Mira, ahora él viene este día, en el 8.
It seems that our international blockade is crumbling, in much the same way that the Berlin Wall did. Thousands of American tourists traveled to Cuba this year illegally. This Italian cruise ship had just docked with 500 tourists. We found products in the stores from most European nations. Even when it was expressly against our law, certain American products found their way in.
Más de las mujeres no me fío más.
This is Gilberto, one of Cuba's leading surgeons. He was in Washington, D.C. lately for a medical conference, and he decided to visit some congressmen.
It was funny. The 7 interviews I had with 7 congresspersons in the States, they were on purpose chosen among the Republicans voting against Cuba in favor of keeping the embargo. And yet all of them told me, listen, I believe the embargo is wrong. I have to vote following the line of my party. But I think it is wrong, and I do look forward to the day when it is put to an end. And they hugged me afterwards.
This is a central square in Havana where people come to trade houses. It's pretty simple. You find someone you want to trade with, go over to the housing authority, and you trade.
Yo tengo 2 casas grandes en Habana Campo y las estoy acercando para acá.
¿Te estás sacrificando algo?
Sí, porque doy las casas grandes y entonces quiero cosas pequeñitas aquí porque ya cuando se viene de Habana Campo para acá hay que sacrificarse y hay que dar cosas con menos valores para que la gente gane más y se vayan para Habana Campo. No todo el mundo quiere ir a Habana Campo.
Allí se puede secar.
Somehow, everyone ends up with a place to live. We met a sociology professor named Beatriz, who told us it was no accident we didn't see homeless people in Cuba. Apparently, there aren't any.
Nosotros recibimos a un joven profesor de Brasil y cuando está sentado en mi casa mira para todas partes y revisa todo y la conclusión es que él me expresa es que un profesor universitario en Brasil tiene un nivel de vida más alto que un profesor universitario de Cuba. Yo le dije, yo sé eso perfectamente, pero tú tienes que ver a los niños de la calle todos los días y yo no. Entonces es una opción.
Ustedes saben lo que es pobreza de gente tirada en el piso en un portal de un establecimiento muy populoso. Aquí eso no se ve.
Como yo te quise a ti, Macusa, nadie te querrá, nadie, pero nadie te querrá. Tú me quisiste, Macusa, y yo también te adoré. Con tanta ilusión te quise que nunca de ti dudé.
This is the Christopher Columbus Cemetery in Havana. Funerals in its central chapel go on all day long. By far the most visited gravesite is that of Amelia Goyri de Ado, Cuba's unofficial saint. Busloads of people from around the country come to ask this saint for help. According to the legend, both Amelia and her baby died during childbirth.
Pero a ella la entierran con el niño en los pies. Cuando la exhuman, el niño, en vez de estar en los pies, está en los brazos.
Me ha dado, yo le he hecho peticiones a ella y me lo ha concedido. Yo creo mucho en ella.
Amelia's grave is surrounded with plaques thanking her for her assistance. What do the Cubans pray for? New cars? Houses? Nah. Most of the plaques are asking for visits with members of their family who've gone to the U.S.
pero es que mi familia toda se exiló, toda. Yo me quedé sola en Cuba. El momento más hermoso de mi vida es cuando mi madre, después de 20 años yo no verla, viene del exilio. Nosotros nunca creímos que íbamos a ver otra vez a nuestros padres. Mi madre vino sola, ya había muerto mi padre allá, y cuando mi madre bajó del taxi, yo no pude bajarme de la puerta, que hay un quicio, para ir al encuentro de ella, que estaba nada más que a 2 metros de mí. No pude porque me temblaban mucho las piernas.
I tried to get in touch with her, but this is about 6 months now and I don't have no answer.
Odalia.
Odalia.
Olalia. Fabiano.
Olalia Fabiano.
Tengo 3 hermanas en el norte, allá en California. Sí, hacía 38 años que no venían aquí, pero ya.
So Amelia's grave is a touchstone for their pain of separation and their prayers for healing. One of the essential things is a place to go and be with friends. Every neighborhood has a grandfather's club. We stopped to visit this one, where the decorating's a bit sparse, but they make up for it with spirit. Like men around the world, they show their love by picking on each other.
Él tiene su problema. Tiene su problema, pero nosotros
We went along with the joke and asked what kind of problems.
No, chico, no. Oye, no, pero fíjate, lo perjudico. Él tiene su problema.
Ah, more sign language. Touching the forehead with 2 fingers means he has only 2 finger widths of forehead, which would leave less room for his brain. Then, in the spirit of fair play, the butt of the joke moves to the next person.
Hay una cosa que no está así porque usa cholo.
Porque no tengo más ropa.
La mujer no lo deja. Porque la mujer no lo deja usar pantalones para no lavarlo.
No, pero si yo tuviera las piernas que muchos tienen aquí, yo me ponía pantalones blancos.
There's something else going on here besides the clowning around and the dominoes. It's a sense that their wealth is their community.
Sí, hay armonía y nos queremos mucho. Queremos mucho, yo creo que queremos mucho y al barrio también lo queremos porque son amigos, amistades que dicen que la familia cercana que uno puede tener es el vecino, que te puede salvar un momento dado.
They told us they enjoyed our visit and they wanted to celebrate it, as Cubans do, with song.
El tango de un hombre de 72 años y operado del pulmón izquierdo. Pero va el tango. Cada vez que te digo lo que siento, no sabes cómo yo me desespero. Si tu Dios es mi Dios, ¿para qué son esos plazos traicioneros? Ya, más cortito porque el tango es más largo y estoy un poco agotado.
Terciopelo son tus ojos soñadores, luz de luna tu sonrisa sin igual.
1, 2, 3.
I have no idea what time these guys go home. When we left, the game was still going on. As we came to the end of our adventure, we went to see a children's theater group perform. As we watched these children, I couldn't help but think that the Cubans are just people, trying to make a safe life for their families, just like us. You know how you feel after living through an emergency? You bond with the people around you. I think that's what's attractive about the Cubans. They're just normal people with normal hopes and fears who've experienced crisis pretty regular for 40 years now. That seems to have caused them to appreciate what they have.
Si gana mucho, gasta mucho. Y si gana poco, gasta tal. ¿Me entiendes? Pero la vida es así. Ahora, es lo que dijo él. Mientras uno tenga mitades, no tiene que preocuparse por la vida.
No aspiramos a consumos muy altos.
When I go inside a grocery, I say, oh boy, how many things I don't need. I don't need all those things.
Derecho, izquierdo, derecho, izquierdo, derecho, izquierdo. Más rápido, más rápido.
The dire straits awakened their ability to pull together, and for many of them, they found an even deeper connection to Cuba.
Yo estoy satisfecho de la vida. Ya le digo, esas pequeñas dificultades que la vez primero las tenemos los cubanos, pues se van resolviendo, se van obviando.
Pero tenemos una gran suerte en estar en nuestro país.
Well, this is my roots. This is where I belong.
Since I was a child, I realized that I belong to a place.
Entonces, definitivamente esa es la cosa más grande que me ha pasado, es nacer en Cuba y vivir en Cuba y gozar de vivir este aire y estos tiempos en Cuba.
Uno, dos,
mis labios sedientos de amor o capricho, delirio o locura, qué boca más linda, esa que yo besarla
The director of this children's theater invited us to attend a rehearsal. There were a couple kids that could use a ride, he told us. The end of our adventure brought us face to face with our dream of ending our 40-year-long war with Cuba. Not even because anyone deserves or doesn't deserve it, but because our capacity for compassion has brought us our finest hours.
pienso que la única manera de resolver los problemas sería con amor. Es como la historia de Romeo y Julieta. Los Montescos y los Capuletos son los políticos. Y lo que hace falta es quizás que surja una historia de amor más grande todavía para que se eliminen las asperezas entre los políticos. O sea, entre el pueblo yo creo que no hay problema.
I hope it has an impact. We do need that impact, both, you and us. We both need it. We need to grow out of this impasse.
Recuerdo del pasado, una brillante de mi primer amor.
¿Y cómo nosotros podemos verla después?
Para la televisión y puede ser para el cine.
¿Y si yo no voy al cine nunca?
Lo vas a ver por televisión. Si no tienes televisión. Si no tienes televisión, que te lo cuente.
Que me lo cuente.
Oye, tú sabes que te vi.
Entonces yo he perdido mi tiempo miserablemente.
Ah, bueno, miserablemente.
Jardín hermoso, recuerdo del pasado, una brillante de mi primer amor. Jardín hermoso, recuerdo del